Atlantic Records, y'all got some explaining to do, man. Some of y'all artists are just unhappy. So if you don't know, Atlantic Records has been one of the biggest labels in the game, especially over the last decade, man. They got Cardi B, Bruno Mars, Skrillex. I'm talking about Meek Mill, NBA Youngboy. Man, they got some of everybody. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle was over there at Atlantic. They got so many different talents. I'm just naming a few of the many talents that they got over there on Atlantic Records. And what happens when your artists are not happy with what you're giving them as a business partner. It all started with NBA Youngboy, one of the hottest, biggest young rappers in the world. He posted this on an Instagram account that's associated with him. He said, I was going #1 2 weeks straight with a mixtape, so they took it down off the charts. I don't give an F. You can't stop me. And he warned any artists out there, don't sign to Atlantic. If you're an artist, they're not going to support you, especially if you live a certain way. And I want to add that to something that Meek Mill tweeted about, all right? Then we'll talk about it more in a second. Just let me get through the information here. So Meek Mill said, so look, I made Atlantic Records hundreds of millions of dollars, and I let them rape me out of a Roddy as an artist. They came about me when I was in jail. They still saying I can't drop music for 9 more months. Roddy, my youngin' still, but that label separated us instantly when the millions came in from him. Same thing they tried to do with me and Rose. It takes a long time to catch up too, because most of them tie in for the love of some money. Artists scared to speak up. They didn't put nothing into Expensive Pain. That was Meek's last album. And then they said I can't drop another project for 9 months at the end of my contract after I made them $100 million. How can anybody survive that? Most rappers can't speak because they depend on these companies. I don't. If I didn't have millions, I'd probably do something crazy. They outsmarting young black kids, taking advantage and calling it business. Other artists speak up and tell the truth while you winning, not when you down. I had to think, Roddy didn't come to me. He was on his own grind. They bought him to me and cut me out as soon as the money came in. The label should have paid me, not Roddy. Then they fed him like I was trying to lock him in. I was trying to help him and eat, and I didn't get $1 from the label. Also, I had a fight for my life to get DC4 counted as an album because they said it counted as a mixtape. If y'all made $20 million off of it, what is it counted as? Me and Roddy good now. This is not about him at all. They would have let us go to war and made the money still. I had to say I'm rich, that's my youngin', and turn to these people and ask, what's up for my work? They asked me to do. I ain't get $1. So speaking of Roddy Ricch, I also wanted to pivot and bring him up before we speak on this. You know, Roddy Ricch is not in a good space right now. And if you're close to Roddy, if you know him, go check on bruh. Obviously, he had one of the most successful projects as a debut in a long time with Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial. He recently dropped his latest installment called Live Life Fast, and let's just call a spade a spade. It has not been received well, but it was going to be tough to follow up behind a classic body of work. I got that bad boy behind me on my wall up top. Fam, Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial is one of my favorite albums of the last 5 years. That album is immaculate, and anything coming behind that was not going to exceed expectations, right? It just is what it is. Sophomore slumps are a real thing, and apparently Roddy is in one. What they say, it take you your whole life to make your first album, and you make your second album, and obviously it ain't gonna be what you did in the first album because you was broke in the first album. So Roddy dropped off a snippet for an apparent mixtape that he wants to drop to kind of get the bad taste of Live Life Fast out his mouth. The record is called Out My Mind. He said, I've been low, I've been high, I'm out my body, out my mind, want to take my soul, take your time. Anywho, he dropped a snippet on social media, and the fans ain't like it. The fans did what the fans do on social media, and they trashed it. And Roddy got back on his Insta story and said, I guess I'm a flop now. Since then, Roddy has deleted his Instagram accounts, his Twitter accounts, and that's that on that. He's gone from social media. You know, here's my thing. You know, you can get what you want from social media. You can see all the positive comments about yourself. You can also see all the negative comments about yourself. You just got to understand what social media is. You know, it's just this is what it is. Like, if you're going to social media for affirmation, you're screwed. Like, I put content out in the atmosphere. A lot of people love my content. A lot of people don't like it. I can't look for that for affirmation. You playing a dangerous game. I appreciate the love and support I get, and that's that on that. You rock with me? Great. You don't? It is what it is. But back to the Atlantic Records part of this thing, which all three of the artists we talked about in this one are all signed to Atlantic: Roddy, Youngboy, and Meek. I think it speaks to a bigger issue that we got with these contracts, man. It is 2022. This is not the 90s. what labels have to do to me is just nowhere near the amount of work with social media. You got a talent like Meek Mill in your building. And Meek is one of the best A&Rs. He be finding these young artists. Meek know what's hot, bro. He really do. Like a Roddy Ricch. He's found dozens of talents like Roddy. And I feel like he should be compensated correctly for that. To me, it speaks to these contracts, though. Because these contracts are made like the 90s principles, the 80s and the 90s, where you got to stay on these situations for 5-6 albums, right? Here's the problem with that. Like Meek is saying, yo, bruh, and I haven't agreed with Meek on a lot of stuff, but I'm with him 100%. This mixtape versus album thing in the streaming era, like I'm a fan, you a fan. Sometimes we don't know if that's a mixtape or an album when we get on our phone and go to Apple Music. We just know music is up, right? These labels are not counting some of these projects as albums. They're counting them as mixtapes, meaning if Meek drops an album once in a year and then drops a mixtape once in that same year, that only counts as one body of work for that year. That mixtape doesn't count. And he can't clear another album until the label says, we're ready for your next album. Meaning, when we recoup the amount of money that we want to recoup and make the amount of money that we want to make off of your one album that you dropped that year versus your one mixtape, which they're just bagging in all that money, right? You can't drop again. And that means Meek, who could probably be trying to get out of a deal in 2.5 years, he's got to hold that bad boy out for maybe 5 or 6 years until they're ready to clear whatever next album Meek has coming up. That's a nasty game, bro. The problem with the game is what happens when Meek Mill's DC4 makes more money because it's on the same streaming platform that the albums are on. What happens when DC4 makes more revenue than his last album, Expensive Pain? I'm just using him as an example. Okay, what's the difference? Like, you made more money off DC4. Like, you made more money on that project. So, and if I'm Meek Mill, it's like, yo, why is that not an album? Ain't the goal to make money? They're prolonging these albums, and they're waiting till these artists are on the last album of these deals, stringing these deals out for nearly a decade sometime when these artists are broke, so they can get you to re-up again for 5 more albums. That'll take another 5 to 10 years. It is a nasty game, man. Youngboy's putting number one album on the board. He's the number one artist on YouTube by a country mile, not even close. And the labels having to do minimum work. Atlantic is not the reason why Youngboy is one of the biggest rappers in the game right now. He's got one of the best fan bases in the world that ride for him, that say, why be better than everybody comment section? Bruh, this model has to change. If I'm the labels, they ain't going to want to do it, obviously, because they're throwing up all this money up front and knowing that they going to always have you for the life of your deal, right? Like, you're not going anywhere. You ain't dropping music. You're not going anywhere. I just think structurally this thing needs to change for everybody to be happier with these contracts. Like, athletes are not as unhappy with contracts. Like, workers are not as unhappy with contracts at their jobs. This is I hate to say this is rape, bro. This is paperwork rape. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comment box below. Prayers to Roddy Ricch, man. Keep putting music out. You'll catch one. And best of luck to everybody at Atlantic Records and all these labels, because, boy, they playing a dirty game out there.